I want to thank this opportunity to share with you what I witnessed in Senegal. I was in Guinea-Bissau in 2009 when I first heard stories about missing children, but I never thought those stories would take me to children trafficking operation in Senegal and the sad subversion of a tradition well respected in that country. After a 6-month research, I was aware that the lack of evidence and information was crucial to this problem. So I decided to spend 1.5 months entering several of these forbidden places, and what I saw and photographed is terrifying and should no longer be ignored. I visited daras in Dakar, Medina, Rufisque, Kurmasar, Diamaguène, Saint-Louis, and Touba. What should be a school is in fact sometimes a place of torture. What should be an education system is often a system of exploitation. Across the country, there is a tradition of sending boys ages 5 to 15 to Quranic boarding schools known as daras. But in reality, the boys, known as talibés, are forced to spend more than 8 hours a day begging in the streets for money, rice, and sugar for their marabouts. According to a Human Rights Watch report, the number of the talibés is increasing. There are more than 30,000 boys begging in the Dakar region alone. Most of them are Senegalese, but the number of children from neighboring countries like Guinea-Bissau has also increased. Parents often send their children to daras to study the Quran simply because they can't afford education. But what is presented as a form of education is often a cover for the exploitation of these children. Or, in many other cases, children are just playing football or walking in the streets, and they are caught by the trafficking system that allows this problem to evolve. Though Senegal adopted a law in 2005 prohibiting forced begging and trafficking, only a handful of cases have been prosecuted. In 2015, the government anti-trafficking unit took its first census over 1,000 Quranic schools. But the unit lacks the means to check every dara, and the police do not know exactly how many of them exist. The daras are highly unregulated, set up in abandoned buildings and unfinished construction projects. It was a challenge and a serious risk entering these false schools. I was only allowed to enter during nighttime, and I was only allowed to photograph the schools, never the children. Why? Because for many years the marabouts asked for help from international NGOs, claiming a lack of means to educate the children. When those NGOs discovered that they were contributing to finance this system, they immediately stopped with the funds. The fact that I was there photographing the poor conditions of the schools could bring back that financial support. At least that was my false pretext. During my time in Senegal, I saw children being whipped and beaten in front of me. I saw the youngest talibs chained by their ankles. I saw talibés in prison in places haunted by despair. I saw the fear in their eyes, but I also saw the indifference in Senegalese society. It's true that these abuses are hidden, but every person can see the children begging in the streets with bruises on their bodies. This scenario became part of Dakar. This scenario became part of Senegal. I had a meeting with the anti-trafficking unit director, and he felt hopeless regarding the situation. His team was composed by only 2 people to deal with hundreds of daras and thousands of talibs. I followed these young boys in the streets after they fled their schools. In Saint-Louis, for example, a city with small dimensions compared to Dakar, but with a large number of talibs, it's very common to see them trying to survive in groups. They know that if they end up alone, they will probably end up in a prostitution network or back in another school. Maison de la Gare Center, a center that helps talibs, is located precisely in Saint-Louis. Every day, young boys wait in line for medical care, food, clothing, and whenever they have the time, they try to learn something from the teachers in the center. I wonder how can a line of wounded children can be ignored in one of the main cities in Senegal. Many of the talibés can stay on this broken system for more than 10 years. They don't know who their families are or where they come from. Once again, I must say that I'm talking about boys that end up in these false Quranic schools when they are 5 years old. and the younger Talibans are precisely the ones that end up chained for months until they gain their Marabou's trust. At first, I didn't plan to visit the holy city of Tuba, but after knowing the possibility of Talibans being chained in there, I decided to go. When I first saw a Taliban in chains, I was immediately pushed out by the Marabou. He understood the danger of my presence in there. Together with my fixer, I decided to jump into the Dara when the Marabou left the school for lunch. I took the necessary photos, but the moments after were extremely difficult to manage. I wasn't aware of the older Taliban's presence. They rushed to warn people across the city that helped controlling the school, and the rope that blocks the main exit of the city was up immediately. By that time, I was scared and impressed by the level of organization that some schools have to hide their operation. Sadly, there are many cases of Talibans that reach 16 years old and become false Quranic teachers and start to exploit the younger boys. So not only the youngest Talibans have to beg for their teachers, they also have to beg to the older Talibans. They know that it is impossible for all of them to accomplish their mission, and they also know what that means. They are tortured, raped, and sometimes killed. One of the most memorable conversations I had with a Taliban was with Amadou in Saint Louis. He said to me, "I'm tired of being beaten. Even when I have the money, I get beaten. I know stories about dead Talibs, but I'm not afraid of death anymore." He was 15, but his eyes and hands were the eyes and hands of an old man. In that moment, I was sure that Amadou had nothing in his life. This reality is becoming even more complex. It's extremely hard to gather money in Senegal, so the Marabouts rent their children to local stores and construction companies, and also force children scavenging for value goods in dumping areas. Many Marabouts have more than one school, and each school can have more than 30 boys. One thing that I discovered is that false Senegalese teachers have a connection with false teachers from other countries that is extremely important to sustain this system. For instance, the false teachers from Guinea-Bissau mainly operate in isolated areas instead of cities like Bissau and Gabou, because it's easy for them to traffic the children from those areas because there's less information and less control. It's very common to find children in the forest crossing the border between Senegal and Guinea-Bissau, mainly after they escape from their daras. Many of these schools are located in city centers like Dakar and Saint Louis, but there are also schools that are literally isolated from the world. During my first weeks in Senegal, I couldn't believe in the amount of schools in Center Dakar, right beside middle and upper-class buildings. The children struggle in dark and unsafe places, and the conditions in the daras are getting worse. The living and sleeping environments are cramped, and medical conditions and wounds go untreated. The boys often suffer from severe malnutrition and untreated diseases. In recent years, numerous children have died as a result of abuse or illness, in dara fires and after being hit by cars while begging. The forced begging, beatings, and horrific conditions in Quranic schools violate Senegal's own laws as well as its international obligations. Senegalese laws clearly criminalize physical abuse as well as forced and organized begging. However, despite the widespread and open nature of the abuse, investigations and prosecutions are only a few, and the convictions result in minimal sentences. I acknowledge that it is really difficult to change the Senegalese society perspective on this issue, since for a long time parents had chosen a Quranic education instead of a formal one due to its cultural significance and affordability. But without structures in place to ensure that all daras maintain standards and focus on the well-being of the children, we cannot trust that they will provide education and allow Talibans to become a productive member of society. Although Senegal is one of the most stable democracies in West Africa, the Senegalese population is still dealing with a poverty-stricken environment that lacks equal opportunity. After my stay in Senegal, I went to Guinea-Bissau to document the despair of those who lost their children and the efforts that are being done to solve this problem. The contrast between the measures taken in both countries are very palpable. For example, Guinea-Bissau created centers to help former Talibans reach their families and give the support until they finish their studies or start working. Public sessions are done constantly to alert the population to the danger of trusting the young boys to these false Quranic teachers. It's also important to bear in mind that the true teachers are the first ones to condemn this situation in Senegal, and although the number of false schools keeps getting bigger, there are a lot of Quranic schools across the country that are still good. Fortunately, these photographs that you just saw already started a change. Right now, Senegalese police are distributing flyers with some of the photographs that you just saw. Many of the children were rescued after the old press photo, but much more needs to be done. I also decided to do a crowdfunding campaign to create the book Talibans Modern Day Slaves, and now the book is available in schools and libraries across Senegal and Guinea-Bissau. But it's also a tool for the people that are trying to save every day thousands of Talibans. The lack of evidence is no longer a problem or an excuse, so we must use these images in the best way possible. Thank you.